Chapter 112. Hyun-sang was breathing heavily as a strange windy sound leaked from his mouth. This... There was nothing he could say. It took all of his effort not to burst into laughter. The victory was a great pleasure, but it wasn't appropriate to express it openly since the opponent had suffered horribly. If I was a first-class disciple, I would have run over there by now. This was the first time Hyun-sang felt so heavily burdened for being an elder. We really beat them. To be precise, Chongmyeong had won, not Mount Hua. But who cares? Hyun-sang's only regret was that he couldn't join the children in celebrating because of his dignity as an elder.
We won! We won! Did you see that? Sayong, Chongmyeong raised our wealth again!
Raised the sect's name. Is that what you meant?
Didn't I say that? Where did that golden pig even roll in from?
Saje, think of your words.
To shit with that! Why should I care about the dignity in this situation? This is the first victory I've had to celebrate since I've entered this damn Mount Hua!
Let's calm down.
Look at the faces of those Jeongnam bastards. It pissed me off every time I had to watch them leave so triumphantly. I couldn't even eat. Their whole journey home is going to be hell.
Hyun-sang gave up trying to control Hyun-young and smiled. He's right. Who cares about decency right now? What good ever came to Mount Hua when they kept up their appearances and stayed polite? All they received was applause for being well-mannered.
Sect leader! Sect leader! Did you see? That Chongmyeong! Sect leader?
Hyun-young, who ran to Hyun-jung, flinched the moment he saw the gentle expression on Hyun-jung's face.
Everything has been achieved. No! This idiot keeps trying to pass on anytime something good happens. Come to your senses, Sayong!
Hyun-jung shook his head.
I feel like my soul escaped for a bit. Wait, that's not important now. This wasn't a dream? There's no dream that's absurd as this. Right, you're right.
Hyun-jung looked at Chongmyeong with a proud smile. Chongmyeong, who was surrounded by other disciples, appeared to be screaming and scolding them for their harassment. But all the Sahyongs were embracing him regardless.
This is it.
How long had it been since the disciples of Mount Hua gathered and rejoiced? Hyun-jung was more satisfied to see the disciples so happy than he was at the fact that they had defeated the Jeongnam sect. Sect leader, Eun-gum approached him with a brilliant smile. The joy is indescribable, but why don't we end this now? It wouldn't be good to keep making the Jeongnam sect watch this.
I suppose so.
Hyun-jung smiled and looked at Eun-gum.
Did you know this would happen?
I didn't expect this much, but... Eun-gum looked at Chongmyeong and said, I expected that kid to raise the name of Mount Hua.
You have high hopes for him.
Right. He's someone that exceeds all expectations in many ways.
Right. I see.
It was true that there were many doubts surrounding Chongmyeong, but what did that matter right now?
We should go. Let them be. We need to greet the other side.
Hyun-young quickly jumped to help out as well.
Shouldn't you bring them some gifts? That way, they'll be sure to spread this story, Sayong. Let's open our wallets. We have some money left, so let's use it. We need to use the money to bribe those people into complimenting Mount Hua.
Hyun-jung sighed and shook his head as Hyun-sang grabbed Hyun-young and dragged him away. Sama-seung kept silent. It was often said that a person driven to the extreme doesn't feel anger. It was seemed that was correct. The anger that had dominated Sama-seung's mind before had vanished. In its place, there was merely a hollow feeling of disappointment. Why did it turn out like this? The Jeongnam sect had never been defeated in the conferences until now. Of all times, it happened now. At the very last conference, they suffered a devastating defeat that could never be washed clean by future generations. The Jeongnam sect, a member of the 9 great sects and one union, lost to a crumbling sect that they sought to destroy. What happened here was unbelievably ridiculous. Why? This was no simple defeat. This defeat would change the flow of power in the surrounding regions. Anyone who knows will regard the Jongnam sect as a loser in Xiangxi. The future of the sect would be unknown. And Sama Sung looked at the disciples standing in front of him. Some were unconscious, while others were caring for the fallen. However, most just seemed bewildered. As he watched the vitality drain from their eyes, he felt something prick his heart. They will also fear Mount Hua, just like their ancestors did. After the demonic sect's attack, Mount Hua's disciples felt the same despair that the Jongnam sect felt. They must have also experienced frustration and hopelessness when faced with a wall that could never be overcome. Why? It was all because of him. Sama Sung's eyes shone. We didn't lose to Mount Hua. They lost to one man. Had it not been for Chongmyeong, such an outcome would have been impossible. What the third-class disciples achieved could be written off as an accident. After all, the Jongnam sect's third-class disciples are younger when compared to Mount Hua's anyway. However, Chongmyeong defeating the second-class disciples left no room for excuses. From now on, whenever the Jongnam sect's name is mentioned, Chongmyeong's name will surely follow. What kind of humiliation is this? Shame. A disgrace that will never be repeated. This. Seeing Sama Sung grinding his teeth, the disciples bowed their heads. This. Damn it. Now that he'd realized the situation, his eyes shone with anger and humiliation. His heart began to pound as if it would explode as his eyes turned distant. How do I face the sect leader? The faces of the disciples turned a ghostly pale when they heard Sama Sung's murmuring. In the eyes of Sama Sung, who was grasping for a way to explain this, he saw the sect leader of Mount Hua approaching. Crunch. He bit his lip enough to make it bleed again, but he couldn't allow his pain to be shown to Mount Hua. They would only mock him further. Sama Sung controlled his expression and spoke to Hyunjong. Congratulations, sect leader. You did well too. Hyunjong smiled. We were lucky this time. Then we must be out of luck. Sama Sung's eyes flashed. Hearing Hyunjong's words, he wanted to scream out, but spoke coldly. You can rejoice as much as you like, sect leader. Isn't victory a rarity for Mount Hua? You never know if this will be the last time you experience it, so you should be happy. Be happy. That! Hyunjong was about to yell, but Hyunsang quickly pulled him back. Sama Sung continued to speak as his tone began to shift. I admit that we lost the conference today, but don't forget that Mount Hua didn't win against the Jongnam sect. Only the third-class disciples won, not the second-class. The fact is that you haven't changed a thing. Hyunjong smiled brightly as he listened to Sama Sung. We think the same too. I am grateful for your comments. I would appreciate it if you could send my regards to the Jongnam sect's leader. Hearing those words, Sama Sung's eyes went wide. How dare he say this? Hyunjong didn't even dare to look him in the eye just the other day, but now he was acting so defiantly just because he won once. You. That moment. One's haughtiness just never dissipates. Sama Sung turned his head. It was a familiar voice now, a voice that he would never forget in his life. Chongmyeong approached the elders along with his Sahyongs. Sama Sung's eyes were bloodshot as his gaze pierced Chongmyeong. All because of him. Sama Sung seemed to be holding back a belly full of raging fire as he glared at Chongmyeong. Receiving the elder's gaze, Chongmyeong punched Jogul, who was standing next to him. Sahyong, arrogant? Huh? Arrogant? Hey, I'm the Sahyong here. So? If you are the senior, you should at least try to keep your dignity. How can you act so rudely? Who are you actually talking to? Who else? Of course it's you, Sahyong. Chongmyeong kicked Jogul once again and turned to Hyunjong. Sect leader, the conference is done, so I felt that it would be polite to come and greet the other side. I see. He's even mannerful. Seeing that he had the sect leader's permission, Chongmyeong shifted his focus to Sama Sung. Seeing a disgustingly wide smile on Chongmyeong's face, Sama Sung's body trembled to its core. This is all his fault. And, perhaps, this man will be the biggest obstacle for the Jongnam sect in the future. Then he'd rather. Inside his sleeves, Sama Sung's hands twitched. As long as he was prepared to live in infamy, a contribution of unprecedented importance could be made to his sect. He may never be able to return to the Jongnam sect, but for the sake of their future. At that time, Chungmyeong smiled and said, "Would you like to take a swing at me?" Sama Seung's eyes shook. This brat. Sama Seung's face turned white upon realizing that Chungmyeong discerned his intentions. What kind of young man could be so crafty? If Chungmyeong's guard was down, Sama Seung might be able to kill him in a surprise assault. However, with the strength that he's shown, it would be impossible to slay Chungmyeong in one stroke as long as he was prepared to defend himself. And if Sama Seung failed to kill Chungmyeong, then he would be stigmatized and hated without accomplishing anything. In fact, his sect's reputation would suffer for having raised a villain. Chungmyeong smiled at the elder who couldn't do anything to him. I think we'll see each other often in the future. Next time, I'll greet you first. Sama Seung stared at him for a long period and then turned away with bloodless eyes. We're going back. Without even waiting for his disciples, he quickly left Mount Hua. Hearing the sighs that freely flowed from the crowd, Chungmyeong laughed. Why act like that? He couldn't understand. Chungmyeong. Chungmyeong turned to the voice that called for him. Hyunjung was looking at him with a very complicated expression. There was a complex mix of affection, pity, pride, and regret all at the same time. Recognizing that look, Chungmyeong closed his eyes without realizing it. In this case, Hyunjung had the same expression as his Sahyung. He would also have that same expression when looking at Chungmyeong. Chungmyeong didn't understand what that face meant in the past, but now he did. He naturally came to understand when he led Mount Hua. After a long time, Hyunjung's voice cut through Chungmyeong's ears. You've worked hard. Chungmyeong smiled brightly. It was nothing, sect leader.